The best thing to come out of that loss to Montreal, Dave Haxtell and company might really be serious about getting this team competitive. Let's talk about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your team every single day. Woo! A stink of a game. I'm saying it. Dave said it. I'm sure the players thought it, and if not, they probably should have. We'll get into that, but I first want to let you know today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Wow. Where to begin? If you heard the pregame live episode, you know that I had already been telling you Dave was getting, for lack of a better term, fed up and was wanting this team to start stepping up and improving, showing that they have the capacity to improve and play better than they have been in the last 10 days. Not necessarily for this season, although, yeah, I told you a few episodes ago, play with pride, boys. Play with pride. We're not even doing that. But now they have forced Dave's hand. He had some very calm, but very strong and frustrated words to media. I'm not going to play the whole thing, although I am very tempted to. But like I did for yesterday's pregame episode, we'll break up his comments. I think his full comments were closer to 5 minutes. We've got about 4 minutes on here for you. So 2 minutes now, 2 minutes a little bit later on the show. But I want you to hear his words, because I just hear his words, and then we'll talk about it on the other side, because I, for one, think that they sounded pretty similar to what we talk about.
Play this game with passion. You play it with heart. You play it for the guy next to you, and we're not doing that right now. And that's more than disappointing. That's hard to be part of, and that's something that we're going to change. Yeah, it's hard to see. It's hard to see us fall off like this. Every time you put this jersey on, it means a lot. And right now, we are not portraying that out on the ice.
As a coach, how do you get them to change? Do you have to move guys out of the lineup? Do you have to?
I'm not going to get into it right here. Not going to get into it right here. It's got to come through, us getting connected here and figuring out what we want to do, because this stinks. Tonight, this stinks. We're walking out of this rink for a second time in 2 home games feeling this way, and that's unacceptable.
Dave, you had 37 shots, so you had plenty of shots, but it's probably not what you want to generate.
Yeah, Bob, it's not about that, though. It's not about that. That's an easy way out on this one. Yes, absolutely. And if you like, I can go through and find all the positives as well, because, hey, you can always find those. But this is start to finish, right? You don't play part of a hockey game. You don't pick and choose the pieces that we're competing in. So it's the full process. And I'm not going to duck any of that. Wait, so
I love this. The comment that I will add is that what took so long? We've been talking about a lot of what Dave said for weeks, for years, if we want to keep it funky. I tell you here on Locked On Kraken, I'm going to keep it real. That means if I feel like the fan base is getting on a certain goaltender, aka Philip Grubauer, too much, we're going to talk about it. If I think the Seattle Kraken was, wrong and could have handled book talk or whatever a little different, we're going to talk about it. And we're going to give out love always. But, I know we've talked about the amazing Kara Lawson before. Fantastic basketball player, now the coach of Duke's team. And Duke has been struggling as of late. They won a game to get into the second round of the NCAA tournament. And what Kara said, which I think is beautiful and is reminiscent of what Dave said last night, my team, we talk about failure. Is this season a failure? Does that sound familiar? Everydayers, OGers, we talk about it on this show. To ask if something is a failure or to acknowledge that you failed in a specific mission is integral to the process of getting better. Kara Lawson said, we don't win that game in the first round coming out of a situation where a few years ago we would lose those games. We don't improve and learn how to win those games if we don't talk about it, if we're not sincere, if we're not honest and truthful. Because she says in the press conference, you can lie to yourself or you can tell yourself the truth. Those are the two options that you have once you're confronted with failure. Are you going to lie to yourself or are you going to learn? The Seattle Kraken are a team that from the outside looking in, they look like they're making excuses. They look like they feel sorry for themselves. They look like they just haven't figured it out. And their head coach and this podcast host is tired of it. I've been tired of it. I've been waiting for the Seattle Kraken to take this into their own hands. We know they had closed door meetings. I can only imagine that McCann and Eberle, maybe even Larson in his own right, have been stepping up to talk to players either individually or collectively. We know Tomas Tatar and Vince Dunn have talked about some of those meetings. But I keep saying, what is the front office going to do? What is the coaching staff going to do? Because at some point, this is their responsibility too. They gave the keys. We talked about it last year. We're not going to make changes. We believe in you. It worked. We're not going to make many changes. We maybe believe in you. Didn't work this season. And now it's time to make some moves. And it seems like that's exactly what the Seattle Kraken are going to do. So coming up on this show, we're going to hear again from Dave Haxtell and a few more of his comments from yesterday. We're going to go to Natural Stat Trick to go over some data points from the Montreal game, including time on ice, because that's going to be important. And then I'm going to let you know about some roster moves because, yep, there have been some roster moves. We're going to talk about all of that coming up on today's episode of Locked on Kraken. I hope you stay tuned because, we're going to get fired up on this one. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken, as I mentioned at the top of the show, is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. I tell you all the time how much I love using Game Time. I have another few trips coming up in the next month or so, 2 weddings, NCAA tournament. My birthday's falling in between. So needless to say, I'm going to be using my phone and checking out the Game Time app whenever I'm in a new city, sometimes in a new state, and just see what are the last minute tickets or flash deals or zone deals that are available on Game Time. I can see the view from my seat before I buy them, so I know exactly what to expect when I arrive. And the Game Time guarantee means I'll always get the best price, If I find tickets in the same section, in the same row, for the same event, for less, Game Time will credit me 110% the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. More Locked on Kraken coming up next. Thanks as always for making Locked on Kraken a part of your daily destination. And remember that we have a 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. that's kind of awkward. I feel like I've been screaming a little bit. Either way, Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Oof, wow. It stinks. It stinks. You heard Dave say it. I said it. Again, I can't imagine that the players don't feel the same. The Curls, again, for those who watched the live stream yesterday, the Curls are just doing their own thing. Okay, anyway, I digress. Just a tough game. I mean, the the Montreal Canadiens, who we went over their record yesterday, less points in the standings than us. They scored 4 goals in the first frame. 4 goals in the first frame. Let's just see. Let's see here. I don't remember exactly when they were scored. Here we go. So we have the first goal at the 4:18 mark. The second goal at the 6:22 mark. Nick Suzuki's goal, I want to talk about that one. I'll probably talk about the first 4. Came at the 17:33 mark, and then one swiftly after that at the 18-minute mark. So, yeah, all of these count as response goals. Oh, we're back to talking about response goals. Brutal. Philip Grubauer would get pulled after that 4th goal. Now, let's talk about the last 2 goals first. The last 2 goals, upon looking at them, I did feel that maybe Philip Grubauer could have done a little bit better to get to those. But I also think if you really break it down, I mean, I can find a defensive breakdown anywhere. So just take this with a grain of salt. But on the Suzuki goal, that was the breakaway goal. He beats Grubauer clean on the glove. You'll see that Brian Dumoulin is opting, and I feel like, at least from watching his body language, he was trying to decide, should I go body up Nick, or should I stay and take away the passing lane? Because if you take away the passing lane, then you give your goaltender eyes to see the puck and then hopefully make the stop. Nick Suzuki beat Philip Grubauer clean. It happens. But there's a few things. One, I wonder if it was a little bit of overcorrecting from Dumoulin, because I want to talk about the new hook goal, the first new hook goal in just a minute, the goal right before Nick Suzuki. But the other thing is, and JT Brown talked about this on the broadcast, I believe it was Larson was back checking. I think that Larson at some point in time, it seems from his body language that he thought he wasn't going to get back in time. And so maybe that's happening simultaneously as when I'm looking at Dumoulin and he's like, do I go? Do I stay? He opted to stay in the passing lane because it didn't look like Larson was going to get back in time, or not in order to take away the pass. And then you expose your goalie backdoor. So what do I have to say about that? A few things. Again, JT Brown mentioned it on the broadcast, maybe too much pinching. There might have been at least 2 opportunities that turned into goals where the Seattle Kraken had too many, their defenders were too far up. But also, again, the new hook goal, you see that on that goal, that's the one where Brian Dumoulin goes to push, I forget who the player is, but he's pushing a player out of the way. And that shot comes in. And as he's pushing, Philip Grubauer is moving the other way. So then you see how this gap opens up, and wouldn't you know, Newhook shoots right into that gap. I've talked about this before on the show. For those who listen every day and are OGers, you might remember that I disagreed with Vince Dunn once when he said, well, for people who know the game, you know that in some situations you don't want to move guys out of the way. And I disagreed with him, and I still disagree with him to an extent. But I walked back my full disagreement because perhaps in that situation, a few things happen. I think the only reason that you wouldn't want to go body to body or move a body out of the way is if you think someone, or you can see that a shot is coming in and you push a body into the line of sight for your goaltender. But if Dumoulin had put some pressure on the Montreal Canadiens prior to that shot, then maybe, you can get in front of that shot yourself. Again, I think, to me, there's no excuse for not bodying up. I would not let a player roam so close to the crease. Okay, maybe you don't want to push him out of the way, but if you're there, you need to be on him. You need to be on him. There's no excuse for that. I'm talking stick to stick, body to body. And too often we see that happen with the Seattle Kraken. We're pushing them out of the way too late, or not at all, or we don't even see them, which is exactly what happened with, was it the second? It must have been the first goal with Caden Gould's goal. I just, was that Gould's goal? I thought, or maybe it was, I thought they said it was Slavkovsky. Anyway, Uri was below the net, and Alexiak didn't see him. And I mean, maybe they're saying that he didn't tip it. I don't know. I thought that was Uri. Anyway, I thought that was Uri's goal, but I'm looking at the scoring and it doesn't have him on here, which is interesting. Anyway, I digress. There are also times where we just don't know where the offensive players are in our own defensive zone. It frustrates me to no end, but I'm not the only one. Dave is also frustrated. Here are his remaining comments.
Good looks. We had some real good looks. But again, it's not about that. When you don't bring the whole package and you don't do it from start to finish, this is where the position that you put yourself after a game. This is how you feel.
Do you have anything that you want to tell the fans about why they should come out and see you for the rest of this homestand?
Well, that's what this group inside of this room has to decide. That's why I said how important putting that jersey is on their backs every night, right? The front of the jersey, what that means, and what that means to everybody in this building. It's 2 nights in a row, like I said. This group, previous to the last week here, has battled so hard. They've scratched, they've clawed. We've been through a whole bunch of different things. And we can't allow this to slide in this direction. So that's what it is.
So there you go. Dave saying a lot of things that I've been saying, that I've said before, whether it was this season or not. And I, for one, am here for it. It's about time. And it seems as though the front office is in lockstep with Dave. Again, in my estimation, it's definitely too late for this season, but also this Kraken team, in my opinion, has had chances to set the tone with respect to, if you are not hustling, if you are not playing hard-nosed hockey, then you don't have a guaranteed role in this lineup. Because what do we say? The 3 Fs, now we've added a 4th, feisty. Fun, fast, forechecking, and feisty. That's when we soar. We're not going to win games by individuals just taking a game over. And so we're going to talk about some individuals, just some data points in a one-off game. But given the comments, given some of the moves that the Seattle Kraken have made, I wonder, I don't know for sure, and at least some of what we're going to talk about as far as time on ice was impacted by injury. We'll talk about that coming up. But I just wonder if some of the names that we see on the lower side of time on ice from yesterday's game are also the players that we might see low on time on ice, or maybe even healthy scratches overall, when the Seattle Kraken take on Anaheim later this week, twice. So we'll talk about that coming up on Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at Sleeper. We are well beyond the halfway point of the season, Seattle Kraken fans. Regardless of where the current standings are, I want to remind you that you could win big playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Beniers, Decord, or even Eberle will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. And to 100x your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me right, Kraken fans. You can win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. A stinker of a game, and unfortunately, another stinker of a game for the Seattle Kraken. You heard Dave Haxtell talking about how he felt, this was the second game in that arena at Climate Pledge Arena. We talked about a few days ago, coming off of a rough loss at home to Buffalo, but it's not the last stinker of a game in my estimation in the last handful of games. He was just talking about playing at CPA, and everyone says they want to play prideful at home, but the Seattle Kraken, quite honestly, have not really ever been able to play well at home. But I thought it was an interesting question. What do you want to say to the fans? Why should they keep coming? And Dave's saying that's what this team has to figure out. I tell you, I feel like we talked a lot about some of this in the last 2 episodes or so, because the writing's been on the wall. The writing has been on the frickin' wall. So let me talk about the roster moves. First, we have to mention that Riker Evans played less than 3 minutes, suffered a lower body injury, and that's unfortunate. We were kind of talking about how much time would Riker get? Are they going to take the training wheels off? Is he going to spend more time with Coachella Valley? I hope this is not a long-term injury for him, especially coming off his first career goal. So we'll see. I love this. Sound of Hockey and a few others saying this is one of the hardest practices we've ever seen this team partake in. Oh my goodness. I swear someone from the coaching staff is listening to the podcast. What have I been saying for months? That the training camp was not physical enough. We do not put these guys through the ringer. And so there's a part of me that's like, how can we expect them to ramp it up when we don't practice? I've talked about this so many times. I know that we've talked about this on Locked On Kraken. So yeah, they should be practicing hard, and they should have been for a long time. Oh yeah, we talk about practice. It's almost like practice matters. So, the whole reward system of we win a game and we don't have to practice. Okay, you won a game. We survived by the hairs on our chins for some of those games, Dave and company. And so to give a reward for winning a game, okay, and not all wins are equal. Not all wins are the same. Not all wins came from a hard-fought battle, and sometimes it came because of a technicality, because the post was kind. It's the same for a loss. So it's all relative. Anyway, I'm getting on a soapbox. I don't think I've ever said this publicly because I know so many people enjoy the Davy Jones celebration and, who's going to get the hat and what's he going to say about practice and blah. Come on, that's mediocrity. It's mediocrity. And this is what we get when we celebrate that. And or we don't push hard enough. We don't push the envelope hard enough. We get to a plateau. Yeah, it's nice to get to a landing, look around, take a deep breath, but sometimes you have to soldier on. You get to the first landing of a mountain. That doesn't mean you climbed Everest. You got one place. You graduate from elementary school. You're not, most people go on to middle school. And then to high school. And some people even choose to go on to college. I'm not making a sweeping indictment on anyone's choices or ability to access education. I just want to put that out there clearly. I have been an education justice worker, so I understand there are complexities here. But if we take it as the baseline, right, of a system that is set up to, even though you matriculate, right, you graduate, there's always more to learn. There's always another challenge just around the river bend. I mean, do I have to keep going? Do I have to keep going? Do you get what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm here for it. Absolutely. We need tough practices. Who's going to show up? You're not going to know who's going to show up in a game if they're not showing up at practice. I love it. I love that we're seeing this. I'm going to tell myself that someone from the organization is listening to the podcast. I mean, I've been saying this for months. I've been saying this for years. You know, I've got people in the comments that don't agree with me. Well, what do you have to say now? What do you have to say now? It's a little too late in my estimation, but I'm glad we're getting it. I mentioned there were a few roster moves. The Seattle Kraken have recalled forwards Ryan Winterton and Logan Morrison from the Coachella Valley Firebirds. That was announced overnight. So why do I want to talk about time on ice? I mentioned the Riker Evans injury, no real update that Dave gave as of last night, but Riker Evans played the least amount of minutes. Time on ice was 2:22. Okay, we'll put him to the side. Everyone skated at least 10 minutes. There were two players, Brian Dumoulin and Jamie Alexiak, who skated more than 20 minutes. The third and fourth, really 3, 4, and 5 regarding time on ice, also defensemen. But again, we were down Riker Evans. So, okay, boom. So we're going to take Riker Evans and all of the other defensemen out of the category. Who were your top forwards as far as time on ice? After Justin Schultz, the next forward, Justin Schultz had the fewest minutes of blue liners. Jordan Eberle got the lone goal, at least that counted, had 14 minutes, almost 15. Jaden Schwartz and Ellie Tolvanen, both in the 13-minute mark. Jaden Schwartz, 13:51. Ellie Tolvanen at 13:04. Matty Beniers, Jared McCann, and Yanni Gourde right in the middle. 12:54 for Beniers, 12:51 for McCann, 12:27 for Gourde. Bjorkstrand and Cartier and Tomas Tatar come in also above 12 minutes, with Cartier and Tomas Tatar just over at 12:01. The three forwards with the least amount of ice time, Brandon Tanev barely missed out on getting 12 minutes. Kyler Yamamoto barely missed out on getting 11 minutes. But you have Brandon Tanev at 11:58, Kyler Yamamoto at 11:57, and Andrei Burakovsky at 10:13. Honestly, looking at the time on ice, it's hard to differentiate. And again, at least for the blue liners, they had to adjust. You also heard JT Brown talking about, that we were going to see the lines be changed up on the fly, and that had a lot to do with, in his estimation, who's ready to work for it. So some of the lines that we saw from last night, at least on 5-on-5, Tanev, Gourde, Burakovsky, Tolvanen, Beniers, Eberle, Schwartz, McCann, Eberle, Schwartz, McCann, Bjorkstrand, Tatar, Cartier, Yamamoto, Tatar, Yamamoto, Tolvanen, Beniers, Cartier, Beniers, Bjorkstrand. Interesting. I find that a little more illuminating, to be honest. Eberle mixing it up with a few guys, just trying to see what's going to stick. You also see Cartier and Yamamoto switching a lot, Bjorkstrand switching a lot, Schwartz switching a lot. Two players who we don't see switching too much, Gordon Burakovsky and Tanev. That line pretty much stayed together. So I don't know. I love that they're having a tough practice. I think it was, so I was reading Sound of Hockey about the practice being one of the hardest practices that the team has ever seen, or the team has ever been put through. And about freaking time. Emerald City Hockey saying Dave Haxtell made some statements last night. Now the front office has made statements again, recalling Ryan Winterton and Logan Morrison. Will it be enough? But what is even enough right now? The playoffs is a pipe dream at this point. So what is enough? And in my estimation, this is not something that needs to stop once this season is done. I do think there's a lot of tinkering that the front office is going to have to do with this roster, but this mentality pushing this team to get the greatness that's in them can't stop. I would say that even if we made the Western Conference Finals, why are we settling? Why are we settling for that first plateau when I thought the goal was the Stanley Cup? And then I thought the goal was being a perennial playoff team and putting yourself in good position to win not just one Stanley Cup, but multiple Stanley Cups. I'm banging a cup. It is not a Stanley Cup, but that's got to be the goal. So this is a good start only if it's truly a start. Because if this is a flash in the pan, I don't want it. If this is a flash in the pan, then I'm on board with people calling for jobs to be, for there to be roles vacated. Can't be just a flash in the pan. All right, Kraken fans, we'll be back with another episode soon. So be kind to yourselves, be kind to one another, and let me know in the comments. Do you think Dave Haxtell listens to the show? I don't know. I thought some of what he said is what I've been saying on the show. Am I wrong? Just let me know in the comments. Hold fast. We got to stay true. Now's the time to stay true. We say loud and proud. Let's go Kraken. I'll see you on the next episode. Peace out.